Hello, this is JOMAJ Studios, and this is our original fantasy action adventure, The Fall of Nale, episode 21. 24 hours later, in the center of Nale's royal hall, which now housed the ruthless evil that is Elos, Sir Vitro, a young brown-haired and eyed surviving member of late Sir Nathaniel's elite squad of knights, was chained to a large rock placed in front of Elos's new throne. Because he was the present leader of the resistance against the sorceress's evil rule, Elos, in an effort to destroy what was left of those that opposed her, decided to break his fighting spirit piece by piece. "Ah!" screamed out Vitro, as he took the pain of being blasted with a high volt of electricity. Elos had been torturing him for hours, while Han stood silently by her throne. "You're wasting your time, witch. I will never betray my people. You might as well kill me now," said the knight in a weak, defiant voice. Elos responded with a smile as she circled the tortured warrior. "You're right. I am probably wasting my time. I mean, after all, a kingdom under my rule will only cater for barbarians, demons, wild animals, and the insane. A noble warrior such as yourself really has only two options: destroy me or die trying," said Elos, then firing another bolt of electricity at the young warrior. "My life is of no significance, for others like me will find a way to destroy you," said Vitro, on the verge of falling unconscious. "On the contrary, you see, I happen to think all life is important, right down to the little-bitty insects we take for granted. This is why I intend to keep you alive. You see, with my powers, I can inflict as much pain as I like on you without actually killing you. So you see, Sir Vitro, we have all eternity to get well acquainted," said Elos, then signaling Han with a hand gesture to take over the torturing session. While Sir Vitro's body endured more suffering than it deserved, Mitch's flying machine floated over the castle, while Prince Nathaniel and his men jumped down onto its roof. Back in the castle, Han had begun sharpening a set of knives he intended to use in his torturing session. As the shapeshifter moved towards Sir Vitro to begin his fiendish process, a razor-sharp boomerang spun right through him. By the time the enchanted weapon spun back to its owner, Han had been reduced to nothing more than a lifeless puddle. "Witch, your time is up!" yelled out the young prince, as he and his men prepared to do battle. "Finally, some real action. I was beginning to get bored," said Elos casually, as she revived Han and summoned up hundreds of demons. "Things have been a little dull since I crushed Nale's greatest warriors, so I'm counting on all of you to make things interesting. Don't disappoint me now," said Elos, then signaling her monsters to attack. Prince Nathaniel's men had all got their weapons and clothing touched by the Hilarion waters, and they were all experts of their individual fighting styles. Demons began to drop like flies. "Aren't you going to help your men?" asked Elos, as she sighted the prince run towards her. "The best way to kill a snake is to cut his head off," said the prince, then leaping into the air to execute a devastating aerial attack with the late teacher's staff, only to be brought down by a roundhouse kick courtesy of Han. "That only works if you're fast enough," said Elos, as she watched her shapeshifter do battle with one of Jacob's greatest students. Han immediately learned firsthand that Prince Nathaniel was no pushover, for despite his shape-shifting abilities, the young warrior had no problem keeping up with him. It was almost as if he had been trained to face an opponent like him. Two of the prince's comrades joined in the fight against Han, and he immediately proved to be too much for the shapeshifter to handle. Elos, interested in knowing exactly how much skill Prince Nathaniel possessed, threw his comrades aside with an invisible force and elevated the ground he and Han were fighting on to more than 20 feet above everyone else, to ensure that no one but her could interfere. Immediately Han got some privacy with the young opponent, he executed a 3-hit roundhouse kick. The prince managed to block the first two, but got struck down by the third one. Han then leaped into the air, where he multiplied himself into 7. Prince Nathaniel, spotting 7 new problems, acted quickly by using his staff for leverage to aerially kick continuously in a circular motion, enabling him to knock down all 7 versions of Han, including the original one, before they could even get their feet on the elevated floor. As the Hans hit the battle-infested ground below, they all became a liquid substance that formed a big pool, which in turn shot up to the elevated floor like a geyser and became a humanoid. Han, however, was given no time to get himself together, for he was quickly greeted by a series of the young prince's attacks. The eagerness to restore his kingdom and avenge the death of all the loved ones he had already lost took his skills up 2 levels, but it also made him careless, for Han managed to disarm and knock him to the floor with a back kick. As the young warrior scrambled to catch hold of his staff, which eventually fell 20 feet to the ground below, Han transformed his hands into two very sharp blades. Prince Nathaniel flipped to his feet and took the fight to Han, who tried as hard as he could to ensure the young warrior was on the receiving end of his blades. But the young warrior was quick on his feet. Eventually, Han's persistence and speed paid off, only to find his blades were unable to penetrate the young warrior's clothing, for they had been touched by the Hilarion waters. Prince Nathaniel, pleased with the advantage he had over his opponent, began to bombard the shapeshifter with powerful punches and kicks that knocked him right to the edge of the floating floor. Elas, a bit unpleased with the young prince's upper hand, fired a ray of energy at Han that increased the shapeshifter's powers a great deal. So much so, the prince's enchanted clothing was no longer an advantage for him. Prince Nathaniel made a move to knock Han off, but the shapeshifter quickly responded by regaining his balance and driving his blade right into the young warrior's stomach. While Prince Nathaniel was still in a state of shock, the evil being flung him off the floating ground like he was an insignificant piece of rubbish. As the young prince fell towards the ground with his injury, Luke and Lance leaped out of an interdimensional portal and into the middle of the battle. Lance, the first of the two to sight the fallen prince, caught him. "Nat, you're hurt!" blurted out Lance, out of concern, as he laid his fallen comrade in a safe corner. "I'll be all right," said the prince with a brave face, but it was clear that the injury was serious. Han, with his new improved powers, leaped down to the area the students of Jacob had gathered, with the intention to finish off Prince Nathaniel and destroy all his comrades. Luke, unable to contain his rage, wasted no time in proceeding to give Han the most severe beating of its whole existence. Luke, who was much too fast and strong for Han, began to bombard the shapeshifter with a variety of attacks, at the same time not allowing the evil being to fall. After striking the shapeshifter about 50 times, Luke raised him off the ground with a jumping front kick. The young warrior, with the power of the armor, then manipulated the air around him to create an energy ball, which he used to scatter the shapeshifter into pieces, while he was still in mid-air. Elas, who witnessed everything, acknowledged she was about to face a formidable opponent by raising an eyebrow and mentally preparing herself for battle. Luke then turned and stared at the evil sorceress for a couple of seconds, before finally leaping at her with a battle cry. Elas responded by firing a huge fireball at the young warrior, but Luke, who was now a grand master of the soft elements, deflected the fireball back. Elas in turn jumped right through the attack and kicked Luke out of the way, only to land unharmed in a black bikini-like battle gear. Lance attempted to attack from behind, but the sorceress unleashed a fire whip from thin air and used it to strike the young warrior down to the floor without even looking at him. Elas then used the whip to counterattack another aerial attack begun by Luke. Lance then got to his feet and drew out his father's sword, and Luke got to his feet and kicked up his father's staff. At this point, even Elas couldn't help but see the spirits of their fathers in them. "If I had known you boys were going to be this much trouble, I would have killed you all on the mountain," said Elas, still pretty confident that she could defeat them. Lance, who was now very tired of her voice, attacked first. The sorceress reacted by jumping out of the way of the young warrior's enchanted bait, at the same time transforming her whip into a sword. As Elas's feet touched the ground, she immediately began to outclass Lance's excellent swordsmanship with style and grace, before finally slashing him twice across the chest and kicking him to the floor. Luke then attacked from behind with his enchanted staff. Elas in turn executed a backward somersault over him and transformed her weapon into a fiery staff. Luke, who like his father was excellent at battling with a staff or stick, found himself being outclassed in his own area of expertise. Elas, first taking time to mock the young warrior's fighting skills, finally took him down with a leg sweep and then horizontally spun over him. By the time her feet touched the ground, her fiery staff had become two fiery short swords, with which she rotated backwards and went into a Wing Chun fighting stance. Both warriors then took hold of each of their father's weapons and attacked at the same time. Elas fended off their attacks artistically with so much ease it almost seemed as if she was playing with them. Finally, she proved her superiority as a fighter by disarming both warriors, slashing them across the chest and flooring them at the same time with an aerial split kick. She then transformed her short swords into a firing aura around her hands. "Come on, boys, I'm beginning to get bored here," said Elas, who more than anything else seemed to be enjoying herself. As Luke lay on the ground beside his comrade, Xiang's warning came flooding back. "If you don't work together, there is no way you can win against her." Luke then turned to Lance, who seemed to be waiting for a new strategy. "Lance, I'll be yin and you be yang," said Luke, signaling to his comrade to concentrate on using each other's strengths. Lance acknowledged the plan with a wink, indicating he was down but not out. Both warriors in unison then flipped to their feet and went into their individual fighting stances. Elas smiled and the warriors attacked. Lance literally threw the first punch, and Elis made a move to counter, but Luke intercepted her counter-attack and redirected it back towards her, causing the sorceress to be struck with twice the amount of energy she released. Lance then followed up the attack with a devastating roundhouse kick that violently flung Elis into her throne. Elis then literally bounced back with a flying fist attack. Luke in turn took the force of the punch and used the energy to rotate the sorceress's body while she was still in mid-air, giving Lance the opportunity to hit her with a steel-shattering kick that threw her into a wall. Lance, eager to destroy the murderer of his father and teacher, picked up his sword and threw it at the evil sorceress, who was now pinned to the wall. Elis reacted by using an invisible force to stop the sword in mid-air and redirect it back towards the young warrior. Luke jumped in front of Lance and manipulated the air around the sword, causing it to dart towards Elis at 10 times the original speed. The sorceress was unable to act quickly, causing the blade of the sword to shoot right through her. Despite Elis' immeasurable power, she was not immune to the blade of an enchanted sword. Elis desperately tried to hang on to life, but her efforts were in vain, for it was not possible. She then gave out a large scream that echoed across the land. Then there was an explosion of light. When the light cleared, all the demons across the land ceased to be. The sun regained its presence, and the unnatural darkness was no more. Nat, stay with us. Xiong will have you back to full strength in no time, said Lance as he gently lifted up his injured comrade. You guys worked well together, said the prince in a weak, fading voice. Of course we worked well together. We argue a lot, but after all said and done, we're all a team, said Luke, desperately trying to keep his friend awake. I'm sorry I didn't have faith in you guys. I know now you guys can do anything, said Prince Nathaniel, then closing his eyes and taking his last breath. Lance and Luke then began to weep uncontrollably, for they had just lost a childhood friend, who was no less than a brother. Now they were left with a new dilemma, for without a direct heir to the throne, the kingdom of Nale had truly fallen. That is the end of the Fall of Nale series, but before you go, answer this question. From a biblical standpoint, what were the reasons that led to the fall of Nale? Refer to the Bible and leave your answers via any of JOMAJ Studios' social media platform links, which can be found at jomajstudios.com. Like Water, The Next Age is now available on paperback and in ebook format via any Kindle device. Also, check out the JOMAJ Studio website, Twitter page, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channel for the complete Like Water series and all other JOMAJ Studio features.